David Harvey's this review, which is not by David Harvey, it is by someone else, of his books. Two books, The Ways of the World, and the other book is Marx, Capital, and the Madness of Economic Reason. And the reason I started looking at it is I just wanted to know what his conception of anti-value is. And I had read a few chapters from Marx, Capital, and the Madness of Economic Reason, but I thought this review might be a starting point. So we have already done a few sessions on this review, and our basic motivation was to try to understand how his conception of anti-value. And I think in the last session we were able to get some grip on it. And we could have just stopped there, but I thought, we'll just go through the rest of the review to see if there is anything useful in it. We'll see. Okay, so I think we had to stop here at this point, the one I have circled with the blue. At this point, Harvey raises the concern that animates his study. I think he's talking about this study, Marx, Capital, and the Madness of Economic Reason. And the contradictory role of credit. Okay, what is the contradictory role of credit? We actually read this bit, but just to keep the continuation. What is the contradictory role? First, credit facilitates both production and consumption. More than that, it does facilitate investment, obviously, and does all other things as well. And last time we looked at some of it in housing market. For example, financiers fund developers to produce housing, while the same financier or banks lend to consumers to realize housing values in the market. Realize housing value to buy a house with it. But obviously, since he is trying to present his conception of anti-value, is using value for everything. Okay, thus credit helps bridge or harmonize the movement from valorization, the creation of value. And in capitalism, the creation of value is creation of something which can multiply itself, to realization, like selling it, and lubricating a crucial transition in the circulation of capital. Okay, but according to Harvey, as per this reviewer, credit is a dangerous lubricant. Okay, what is the danger? That you might default because debt must be repaid. Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, there are a lot of debt which government takes credit for. The government's debt to itself. I mean, they can just write it off. I think I'm not sure, but as far as I've seen in this review, Harvey doesn't seem to realize that the centrality of debt. I mean, he does realize it, but the centrality is more than what he's talking about, the bridging the gap. I'm sure in his book and in essays he have talked about it a bit more elaborately, but anyway, let's see. So because debt must be repaid. Yes, must be repaid, but I think the main thing is not the payment of debt. The main thing is the confidence in the system. As long as the system is there is a confidence, I think debt can be you know, you can always restart, and the role of the state and the governments is very important in that. Even though what the danger uh, Harvey is talking about is also a real danger at a different level, at the structural level. We'll see if he talks about it, otherwise we'll mention it. Okay, because debt must be repaid, not necessarily, but yes, okay. Credit generates new incentives for investing in production, yeah, for investment, especially for the long-term investment. That is very important. Um, the frantic search for profit, however, is supplemented by the frantic need to redeem debts. I don't know if you can compare the search for profit with the redemption of debts. But I guess redemption of debt is the flip side of frantic search for profit. Because for the banks and financiers, redemption of debt is their profit. But on the face of it, I think frantic search for profit is more important. This accelerates the spiral of endless accumulation. What? The frantic search. Okay. Frantic search for profit and frantic search for everything is frantic in capitalism anyway. But capitalists increasingly lend out money as interest-bearing capital rather than investing in production. That's financial capitalists. And there is reason for moving from production to investment, because obviously from investing in production to investing in finance, because accumulation is easier, and the profit rate in mature capitalism becomes increasingly low, relatively speaking, and all those other problems, and it takes time to invest, produce, and then store and then sell. So obviously, if your main purpose is to accumulate for the sake of accumulation, you will try to short circuit the whole thing. So it is natural for capitalism to move from production to finance, but obviously it has its own problems, structural problems. A structural problem in the sense that at the end of the day, finance depends on real world production and all those things. And if there is no balance proportion between this, and if the balance is tilted toward the finance too heavily, then that can endanger the existence of and the sustenance of the whole system in the long run. So what happens is sustainable structural relationship between finance and production should be something like this. Sustainable in the long. This is production, and this is finance. But what happens is in mature capitalism, it reverses. Reverses or become exactly opposite. Yeah, finance there, and this is production, and this is finance. So structurally, it becomes unsustainable in the long run. At least the reason tells us that but obviously capitalism is a creative system, so they have been able to sustain it so far. So let's see. But rationally speaking, it seems like this is not sustainable in the long. Okay, but the capitalists obviously think otherwise. They think that every now and then they just need to restart after there would be a burst and their bubble would burst and then you start a new bubble. So they think that they can continue on like that. But some other people think like us that this is not sustainable in the long run, hopefully. Okay. Okay, so but capitalists increasingly lend out money as interest bearing capital rather than investing in production. Obviously, it's proportionally. There's still investment in production and things. Increasingly, the proportion is tilted toward what we just saw. The result is a massive accumulation of debts with no real chance that they will ever be redeemed. I think the problem is not debt as such. The problem is what I just said. Structurally, finance is anchored in real world productions. So debts are fine as long as the proportion between debt are fine as long as they are buttressed by the real world production. So and real world economy. So if the debt increases, the proportionally there should be increase in the in the in the proportion of in the production as well. So the main thing is not the debt as such, but the balance between the debt and the real world economy. Probably that's what he means, but from this it's not clear that that's what he means. It seems that debt itself is something unsustainable. Ultimately, Harvey predicts the failure to redeem these debts will initiate the mother of all crises to the system of capital flow. What this might be the same as what I just said, or it might be that he thinks that debt itself, if they are not redeemed, there's something tragic going to happen. But the failure to redeem debts are very common in capitalism, so they're part and parcel of the game. And as such, I think that's not a problem. The problem is if the game of these debts is proportional to the economic activity, enough economic activity is generated to sustain that debt game or not. I think that's what the real problem is. And the real problem is the production base is becoming is shrinking in proportion to the size of the finance. And rational expectation is that it won't be able to sustain it structurally in the long run. That's what. For Harvey, the concept provides the key to understanding these. Not really. The concept of it's not the concept of anti-value. I think was the concept which anyway we'll look at this. I think let's stop here. It's a good point to stop. So next time we'll see what Harvey has to say about this imbalance between debt and the real world economy in connection to anti-value. Okay, next session. Hopefully see you in the next